Hi everybody, and welcome to Lost Genre Reddit Stories. In this video, I've got a story for you with a pretty big shift in the update from relationship advice, and a great story from Petty Revenge. So, if you want to go ahead and get started with the stories, you can use the timestamps below the video. Now, let's get started with the first story. This post is from the subreddit Relationship Advice, and it's from user Throwaway886344. My 32 female husband, 32 male, is changing his mind about having kids, and I think he's considering leaving me. This is still fresh, but I barely slept last night, and I'm trying to wrap my head around my life right now, and just have to type some of this out. My husband and I have been together for 6 years, married for 2.5. We're happy, we communicate pretty well, we want the same things, etc. He has a regular full-time job and is also in the reserves, which has involved him being gone for various trainings, activations, and deployments. He was just gone for 3 months for training. Now that he's back, he's been slightly off, and I finally confronted him about it. It does take some time to readjust back to home life and being together, but I felt like there was something else going on. He said he's just sort of feeling stuck and not really sure what to do about it or how to talk about it. He said a lot of things about other aspects of his life, like where he's at in his career, etc., and not being sure if he's happy with it or where he's at. And with us, he's saying he feels like we're already living the life we're going to live when we're 50. More specifically, he's been warming up to the idea of having kids, where I still have been saying I'm not ready. To clarify, when we started dating, we told each other pretty early on that we didn't want kids. We got married with the understanding that still neither of us wanted kids. We've discussed this multiple times, especially over the past year or two, probably because we're surrounded by friends and family having babies, and the past several months I have noticed that he's become more open to it. I just didn't think it had gotten to this point. I just feel completely overwhelmed and devastated. I so badly want to have kids. I used to be like, F no, and now I feel like I understand why it can be really great, but I just still don't feel certain enough that it's something I truly want to do. It's so much work. We have a freaking puppy and this was hard enough. I feel like that showed me that I'm not ready for a kid. I've never had that desire to be a mother. I'm also absolutely terrified by it, and my worst fear is going through with it based on the hopes that I will grow to love it, but instead regret it. Not to mention, on top of all that, our lifestyle with my husband being in the reserves, I have to be comfortable with the fact that he will need to travel and very likely deploy again, and I will be raising a small child on my own sometimes. It's totally overwhelming to think about, and he knows all of this. So I kind of feel like this may be a deal breaker, and I feel totally powerless and angry. Like, I want to say, what about your effing marriage vows? You committed to this, to us, but at the same time, how on earth can anybody expect someone to stay in a marriage and give up the opportunity for children? And I'm not saying I never want kids. Maybe I will change my mind. It's not that I'm not open to it, but I'm already 32. How much am I going to change my mind at this point? And is it fair to expect him to hope for that? And with all of this, the thought of this ending and having to start over is just too overwhelming and devastating to think about. I just feel emotionally torn apart. This is my actual worst nightmare. OP, what you're going through is a really difficult situation, and I'm so sorry that you have to go through with it. However, it is quite possibly, like you say, a deal breaker. Having a child is not a thing that you can try for a while to see if you like it, and then if you don't, return it or move on to something else. This is a human life, so it is a huge decision to make. If your husband went from not wanting to have kids to now being open to it and maybe actually wanting them, then that is something that you need to talk about. I understand, of course, how frustrating and infuriating it must be for you, kind of feeling betrayed that he changed his mind, But at the same time, the heart wants what the heart wants, and if he's now open to having kids and is actually wanting to have them, then you also can't expect him to stay with you just because, you guys are married. At the end of the day, it's up to what you guys actually want out of life, and you shouldn't make a decision based on what the other person wants. If this unfortunately means that the marriage has to end, then I would focus on making it as easy as possible for the both of you to move forward. And if this is the case, OP, you are 32, which is still very young, so you shouldn't feel overwhelmed about starting over. Maybe you do right now, but that's because you're super close to the problem. Hopefully, it won't be like this in the future. In any case, there's not much more I can say about this because I've never been in OP's shoes, so I'm just talking out of what makes sense to me. What about you guys? What is your opinion on this situation? What kind of advice would you give OP? Let me know in the comment section what you think, and now let's move on with the community comments to see what they had to say to OP. Check the Boxes says, you shouldn't have them just to keep your husband. There is no middle ground with kids. It's have them or don't. If you have them without fully wanting them, it will lead to resentment of him and misery for you, especially if your husband gets deployed and you are stuck alone with the kids. What is the bigger nightmare? Starting over or you having kids just to keep him? But he is gone most of the year and you are handling however many babies alone? I know this hurts so much because you love him and this is killing the future with him you imagined, but it will hurt you and the kids so much more if you have kids you don't want. Is there any possibility this new need for him is because it was just on base? He might have been with a bunch of guys who might have newborns at home and talked for hours and hours on end on being so happy to go home to their happy wives and cute little babies, how much they miss the kids and can't wait to see them. Hearing that over and over again could have gotten the baby fever into his head. Unfortunately, if he has decided he still wants kids after being away from that influence, you will have a choice to make. Someone will get hurt no matter what, but ultimately both of you will be happier with a partner who is fully on the same page with you. And OP responds, I know he was around a mixture of single and married people, some parents. He also has a few close friends with babies right now, which I know has caused him to think about it a lot. I just feel like their lives are a bit misleading. We've not seen these friends a ton, besides short visits when the baby is still tiny, mainly sleeping and cuddling. We constantly see adorable photos. I feel like maybe he's forgetting the intense stress and work involved with a baby. Or maybe I'm the only one who truly dreads and fears this. I guess that right there is worth discussing with him again. Spongier says, imagine having kids and then he leaves you. He's unhappy with his life and thinks a child is what fixes it. But a child never fixed anything. Children are difficult even for happy marriages. Joe Dirt 1001 says, if he thinks he's stuck in life and he's not sure that he is happy, having children is not the answer. You don't get more stuck in your routine than having a child to support and raise. And he may have known the entire time that he wanted children, but has simply been hoping that you would come around. Otherwise, I don't see how he can be unhappy and all of a sudden want children as well. Unless, of course, he's unhappy because he wanted children by now. And OP responds, I agree that feeling stuck and having kids to not feel stuck anymore seems misguided. I think it might be that he's examining his future and he's already got a great job he can retire at. We own a house, we have pets. I think he's just thinking, okay, this is it. And it doesn't have to be. We're both open to moving. He could switch up his career if he wants. I guess I'm just not sure if those things would be enough at this point. Well, I think the community has really given OP good advice and clear points that she should consider discussing with her husband. Points that I didn't take a look at. For example, that he is stuck and unhappy and suddenly wants kids. I didn't see it from that angle. And it is a very valid point. You shouldn't be having children to make your life happier or whatever if you're stuck or unhappy with the way things are at the moment. In any case, there is an update, so let's continue with that. A couple of days after my post, my husband and I sat down and had a good talk. I asked him to give me some time to actually consider having a kid as a reality. I always just say, maybe one day, and keep shooting it down. If he had been thinking about it for a long time, I wanted the opportunity to explore my feelings too. So I did some serious soul searching. I read a book, The Baby Decision. That really helped me think it through. In the end, I realized I was much more open to a kid than I realized, and thought it was at least worth some serious discussion and consideration. I'd been thinking about it for 2 weeks and was trying to decide when to bring it up. Unfortunately, my husband sat me down first. He started crying and said he hasn't been happy for a while and this wasn't what he wants anymore, and that he wants a divorce. I was in complete shock. I explained that I'd been doing a lot of thinking and was open to talking about kids, but he said it didn't matter. He said realizing his mind was changing about kids was kind of what made him realize he felt changed in a lot of other ways. He didn't want this life we had built together anymore. Marriage, house, dog, stable job. He went to stay with his parents for a while. In my heart, I knew his mind was made up and it was over, but I decided I wasn't going to go down without a fight. This was not what I wanted, and I was going to kick and scream my effing way through it. We had a series of long, painful talks over the next couple of weeks, where I demanded more answers. He wouldn't go to couples therapy with me, but he actually started going to therapy himself, his own choice. Basically, he's really not okay. He's massively depressed. He hasn't felt happy about anything for a very long time. He describes just feeling dead inside. I think he's ignored it for way too long and hit this breaking point where he doesn't even have the capacity to manage his own feelings or life right now, much less a marriage. I've done everything I possibly can. I even told him I'd be willing to give him some time and space to figure things out, rather than going straight to divorce. I love him and will stand by him through anything. But his mind is made up, and he says he thinks it's best for both of us to just part ways. He doesn't feel right asking me to wait around for him. So, that's where we are now. He hasn't stayed in our house since he first asked me for a divorce. It's like the man I fell in love with and married died. It's intensely heartbreaking, and I just feel shattered. I can't describe how scary and sad this is, and it's not just losing him. It's losing so much of the stability I once had. Selling the house, having to support myself again, I make much less money, and having a dog to take care of on my own. Thankfully, he's assured me he won't rush me and wants to help me find a good, stable place to live. I mean, it's the least he can do. One of the craziest parts about all this is I think I've genuinely changed my mind about wanting children. I guess I'm glad this is happening before there was a kid in the picture. I just never ever saw it coming. Some days it still feels completely surreal. Other days are crushingly lonely and I feel completely abandoned. I'm leaning heavily on my friends and family for support. I started going to therapy myself. I have a tendency to blame myself and feel like I'm not enough, which I'm trying not to do here. It's just hard. I'm not okay, but I will be eventually. I know I'm tough and that I can get through this. I just sometimes wish I didn't always have to be. Anyway, thanks everyone for reading. Go hug your spouse or your significant other or your best friend or your dog. I'm not okay, but I will be eventually. That's the attitude, OP. I'm sorry you have to go through your marriage ending this way. And I'm sorry your husband's going through that big of a depression. But what makes me hopeful for you is your attitude. The fact that you didn't give up despite knowing that in his heart he was set, you said you were going to go down kicking and screaming. You're a fighter, OP, and like you say, I'm sure you will be okay eventually, even happy again. And that's very admirable. So OP, I would say now you just have to focus on yourself. The rest comes second. All the best, OP, and take care. Now, we move on to the next post. This post is from the subreddit Petty Revenge, and it's by user Blackbird named Jude. He wanted all his stuff back, so I made sure he got everything. So my last relationship was beyond bad. He was all sorts of abusive and controlling. At one point I had the strength to break up with him, but then we got back together after we discussed some things. Stupid, I know, but yeah, love and all that. Well, anyways, one of the things we agreed on was that he and I would stop drinking alcohol because he was beyond crazy aggressive when he drank, and I wanted to support his sobriety. This is really important. Fast forward about 8 months or so, and we got into a huge fight, and I not only broke up with him, I kicked him out of the house and told him he wasn't ever allowed back inside. We'd been living together for over a year at this point, so his mom got in touch with me about getting his stuff. While on the phone with her, I could hear him in the background saying, "Make sure they get everything I own or bought. I want it all back." Apparently, even stuff he gifted me he wanted back. But honestly, I didn't care. I was happy to get rid of anything related to him. While cleaning up our room and gathering everything, I started to come across numerous bottles and cans of alcohol. It seems he had been drinking again for a while and was hiding the evidence in the room. I mean, he was hiding them under the bed, in his guitar case, rolled up in his clothes, in some old backpacks of mine, and so on and so forth. He had said he wanted everything of his, so any bottle and the few unopened cans I found went straight into one of the garbage bags of his stuff. By the time I had gathered everything up, I had 3 bags of stuff, and one was basically all just the alcohol. Dropping them off was just so satisfying. He actually called me moments later I left his parents' place, ranting about how petty and immature I was being. My response? Well, you wanted all of your stuff back, and those definitely weren't mine. Plus, I figured you'd probably need a drink to deal with the breakup. I promptly ended the call and blocked him on everything. The most satisfying thing I've ever done. OP's edit. All the bottles and cans were left as is, closed and such, because I knew that if I put in empty cans that would leak and damage his things, that would cause so many issues, and I just wanted him out of my life. Beautiful OP. Petty and precise. He wanted everything back, and that's what he got. And it's that time that we've reached the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed today's stories. I certainly did reading them to you. So if you did, then go ahead and give the video a like, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and become a member of our Discord community that just keeps growing, and it is fantastic. And like I said in the beginning of the video, all of the relevant links are in the video description below, so be sure to check them out. And finally, I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to watch this video. It really does mean a lot to me that you guys enjoy this content, so thank you once again. And having said all that, I will see you guys in the next video.